Hi, this is Omar. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Countries of the World. This is the third video in a series of videos I'm making on each and every country. In the first two videos, we covered Australia and we covered New Zealand. So we saw how both these countries are important contributors to the world economy, as New Zealand is a dairy powerhouse, one of the largest exporters of dry powdered milk, and Australia is a large exporter of coal, iron ore, and LNG. So today we'll be moving north a bit and we'll be covering Indonesia. So Indonesia is a fascinating country because if you just take a look at it, it's not in one piece. It's basically like you picking up Mexico and smashing it on the ground and it's breaking into pieces. The reason why I mentioned Mexico is Indonesia is roughly of the same size in terms of landmass compared to Mexico. But when you look at it from a naked eye, it's hard to draw that distinction. So let's talk about the population. So Indonesia is the fifth largest country in the world in terms of population. It has a population of 275 million. So to understand Indonesia, you have to look at each and all the major islands. So just to be clear, if you see the news or the websites, they will call Indonesia as an archipelago. So archipelago is basically a fancy word for saying a group of islands. And this word is generally used for Indonesia. I haven't heard it being used for any other country. So we'll not be talking about those 18,000 islands, and it wasn't even practical for the maker of this map to make all those 18,000 islands. But we will definitely be talking about the major islands. So which are the major islands? So the major island is Java. This is where the capital of Indonesia is located, which is Jakarta. And this is by far the largest city in that country. It has a population of 10 million. Compared to the other larger cities which have a population of around like 2 or 3 million. So this Jakarta is based in this island, you could see here, which is called Java. And although it doesn't look like the largest island in Indonesia, but it holds around 55% of their population, and it has 60% of their economic activities. And one reason is this land has a lot of volcanoes. It's very fertile. There's a lot of rice plantations over there. A lot of like manufacturing units are over there. So that's why this is an important island. When you think of Indonesia, you should think of Java. The other large island is Sumatra. This has around roughly 20-25% of the population of Indonesia. And then the third most important island is Sulawesi. It's somewhere over here. It's like a group of islands again. So that's the third largest island. So if you combine all these three islands, that will explain around like 80%, around 80% of the population of Indonesia. And when you look at the map, it's not really clear that who or which countries Indonesia shares its borders with. So, in this island, Borneo, they share their border with Malaysia. Here, this island, this is called the Guinea Island. So they share the border with Papua New Guinea, which is a separate country. We'll be covering in a separate video. So what's the history? So Indonesia it has been inhabited by at least by 40,000 years. And some archaeologists' findings suggest that the history might go back even further. but I mean, there are some account that originally like people came from somewhere here in Taiwan and they settled in Java, so that's the major ethnic group. But there were other people who came from the subcontinent over here, and so basically Indonesia is not it's not a homogeneous country. It has more than 300 ethnic groups, and they speak in various languages. But I mean, as is the case with most countries which have several languages, that there is usually a lingua franca. So lingua franca means a language which is commonly used, or which is commonly used to communicate with people in the provinces or the states who don't speak the same language. So it is called Indonesian, but what is Indonesian? It's basically, you could say, a more formalized version of Malay, which is spoken in Malaysia. So the language that is spoken in Indonesia is mutually intelligible with the Malaysian. So let's come to a bit of recent history. So Indonesia was one of those countries which was colonized, but and one of the reasons was early on, the Spanish came, the Portuguese came. I think the attraction was because Indonesia is located uh, in the middle. Like there's the Pacific Ocean here, there's the Indian Ocean here, and there are a group of islands here called the Spice Islands. So it used to be, I mean, you could easily see that it has an important location. So that's why, and the land is uh, rich in agriculture. So that's why it was an attractive, you could say, place for the colonial powers in those days, in the 1600s. So the Portuguese came, the Spanish came, but they could not establish their control for various reasons. But then the Dutch came from Netherlands, from here. Initially, they came as the Dutch East India Company. It's one of the first joint stock companies in the world. So when you think of modern corporations, well, I mean all the big technology companies nowadays that you see in the stock markets, but in those days, many centuries ago, it was um, the Dutch East Indian Company. So they came here and they started ruling Indonesia. And I think one thing that sets them apart is they did not enforce the Dutch language on Indonesian. So that's why, unlike other colonies where people speak the language of the colonizers as a second language, when Indonesia, I believe that is really the case. So first they came as a company, and then eventually, due to certain reasons, it was I think in the late 19th century or 18th century, the Dutch government took direct control. So I mean, this area was directly controlled by the Dutch, you could say, for roughly 250 to 300 years, from 16th century to mid 20th century. So in the mid 20th century, when Japan was, and here it was an imperial power, and they had their footprint in the surrounding countries. They also came to Indonesia, and the Indonesians, looked at them as somewhat liberators, because they it gave them a chance to get free from the Dutch colonists. So eventually, Indonesia gained independence, and then there was like military rule, and they have transitioned to democracy, and so I think that's a good background on the history and the politics. And now let's look at their economy. So I mean, just like their larger neighbor, Australia, um, I mean, in terms of land, not in terms of population, because Indonesia has a population of 275 million, which is you could say more than 10 times the Australian population. So Indonesia, they are resource rich. So most people may not know, but they're the largest coal exporters in the world. They are also the largest palm oil exporters in the world. They also have other natural resources, coffee, rubber, and recently they have found like big nickel mines. So I mean they are giving good competition to Australia when it comes to nickel. That's fairly recent. Other than that, they have a big manufacturing sector, which is around 18 to 20% of GDP. They have a large like textile sector. They have a um, like food and beverages, and one of their famous products is the Indomie noodles, which is exported around the world, and it's one of the, you could say, iconic brands when it comes to instant noodles. So I'm sure most people, if not have eaten it, they might have come across these noodles on the supermarket shelves at big retailers. Um, so where does the economic activity takes place? So most of it takes place in Java, and because this is where most people live, and most of the manufacturing facilities are over there. So which are the famous Indonesians? One of the famous Indonesians are, I mean, when I say famous, because these videos are in English, so I usually refer to any actors which have a presence in Hollywood, although they might be Indonesians who are famous in Indonesia, but I'm just referring to the people who have worked in Hollywood. So uh, one of the Hollywood's actors is Christine. She has worked in Eat, Pray, Love movie. Then there is Cinta Laura. She's also worked in Hollywood. And there's Yoshi Sudarso, who worked in Bullet Train. So yeah, so before I end this video, let's because we discussed the capitals a bit. So as you know, Jakarta is the capital, as I mentioned, but Indonesia is looking to move the capital here, which is in the on the Java island, to here, to Borneo. So this is, you could say, relatively sparsely populated, and they want to move the capital here because Jakarta, I mean, they're saying it has become overcrowded, and it's not a place which is fit for for the diplomats coming, and any other activity when it comes to the federal government. So they they're planning to move the capital here. They're making a new capital here. They're investing around 30 to 40 billion dollars, and as per the timeline, maybe it may get completed in the next 10 years. So making new capital is not something new. In Egypt, they are planning to move their capital from Cairo. They're making a new administrative capital. Similarly, Australia, Canberra was a new capital. It's a new city. Similarly, in Pakistan, Islamabad, I mean, it was a new capital which was made in 1960s. So you will see many companies, or many countries moving their capitals for certain reasons. Okay, that was the video on Indonesia. I hope you enjoyed it. So do stay tuned for my other videos. So the next country that we'll be covering is Malaysia. Because the way we are tackling this is we are like going a bit north in every video. So we'll be covering Malaysia in the next video. Okay, thank you.